Good morning.
How's everybody feeling?
Good.
Good. It's good to see you all. Good to have you here. Love your energy, love your vibration. Beautiful thing. So thank you, Roy, for cluing us in, letting us know about our message today. First of all, our series for the month is The Wonderful World of Wisdom. And we've been using animated movies all month to bring an idea and find some spiritual truth beneath these movies. So the first week was Finding Nemo, a world created by fear. We looked at the story of Nemo's father, Marlin, made a decision based on fear, based on something terrible that had happened. And everything else in the story hinges on this decision that was made by fear. So we talked about how we must handle our fears. Last week, based on Kung Fu Panda, there is no secret ingredient. That the truth of life is that many times we're looking for a secret, we're looking for that thing. In the movie it was the dragon scroll, but when he got the dragon scroll it was blank. And he recognized and learned through a conversation with his father that the way you make something special or significant is because you believe that it's special or significant. And so we talked about using the power of our belief to then create whatever it is that we want. There's no secret ingredient. There's no special mantra or affirmation that you must know, or some special teacher or guru or DVD or any of those things. There's no secret ingredient. You're the secret ingredient, your belief and what you believe to be true. So we move on this week. In our movie night this past Friday, we watched Frozen. We had a good time. It's a great movie. A lot of people love that movie. The song Let It Go won the Oscar this year as the Best Original Song, even though I thought Pharrell should have won for Happy. All good. Let It Go is a good song. It's a powerful song, and from a powerful movie. So I want to talk a little bit about the background behind this movie, Frozen. First, what inspired it? Well, it's inspired by a story by Hans Christian Andersen, the Snow Queen. Hans Christian Andersen is like the god of fairy tales, fairy tale writers. The Little Mermaid comes from him, The Princess and the Pea, The Emperor's New Clothes. So many great stories that we know and love and have grown up with. What's interesting about the Snow Queen is that the Snow Queen is actually his longest literary work. It's a powerful work. And one thing that we must understand with the work of Hans Christian Andersen is that it's actually full of allegory. And while as children we can enjoy and love these stories, it's full of symbols, it's full of allegory. I found it very interesting, even in watching the movie Frozen, where we have this moment where Anna is going to her sister Elsa, and they're going up the mountain. And anytime you see in a story when you're going up a mountain, we look with Moses, he went up to the mountain to God. That's always about that idea of moving up into higher consciousness and having a conversation with our higher self to illuminate our third eye. And I thought it was very interesting that as Anna is moving up the mountain, she doesn't actually go alone. She goes with a brother by the name of Christoph. Why is that significant? Well, that Christ, we've talked about this before, that Christopher, Christ. Christ is the ancient Kemetic word, which means oil. And it speaks to the idea that, if we look at the idea of awakening, that it's said and it's believed that there is a substance within us, the oil that is actually raised up through our spine, that then comes up to our brain, to the third eye, thus illuminating our very being and our consciousness. And this is why we have the verse from Jesus that says, if thine eye be single, then your body will be full of light. It's about illuminating that third eye. So again, we have this idea, this ascension that's happening in the story. We're not going to deal with that, but I want you to understand that there's a lot of symbol and allegory. One of the other things that's interesting with the story of the Snow Queen and looking at Frozen, that it's obviously about ice and about cold things, that there's a lot of symbolism behind that. And I want to share what was in the original story of the Snow Queen about this ice. And so it goes like this. There was an evil troll that was called the devil in the story, who made a magic mirror. And this magic mirror distorts the appearances of everything it reflects. It fails to reflect the good and beautiful aspects of people and things, while magnifying their bad and ugly aspects. The devil in this story, who teaches a devil school, took the mirror and his pupils throughout the world, and he delights in using it to distort everyone and everything. The mirror makes the loveliest landscapes look like boiled spinach. They tried to carry the mirror into heaven and the idea of making fools of the angels and God. But the higher they lifted it, the more the mirror grinned and shook with delight. And it slipped from their grasp and fell to the earth, shattering into a million pieces. These splinters, some no larger than a grain of sand, were blown around and get into people's hearts and eyes, freezing their hearts like blocks of ice, and making their eyes like the troll mirror itself, seeing only the bad and ugly in people and things. And so this is the symbolism behind what this ice really represented, that in the story of Frozen, eventually Anna, her heart is actually struck with the ice. And what this is symbolic of is that idea that once your heart or your eyes, in this case, become frozen like blocks of ice, you can no longer see what is true. You can no longer see what is good. It distorts everything. And so this story was really, as Hans Christian Andersen wrote, it was also an allegory about how we come into life, into this world of duality. In the story of Hans Christian Andersen, there's actually a brother and a sister, male and female, like Adam and Eve, where in Frozen we have two sisters. So let's talk a little bit about the story of Frozen, right? So we have these two sisters, Anna and Elsa. Elsa has a magic power. She has this magic power to sort of create winter at will. And it's a lot of fun for them as little girls because they're in this big castle and she can create, make the whole floor ice and they can ice skate all around the castle and they can build a snowman and there's a wonderful song, "Do you want to build a snowman?" It's great, right? And they have so much fun, but what ends up happening in the moment is that Elsa hurts her sister Anna. And how does she hurt her? Well, what happens is they're having so much fun, and Anna is moving so quickly. She's like, wait, I can't keep up with you. She gets scared. She feels overwhelmed, and then she hurts her sister. And so because of that, her parents make a decision that this power that you have has gotten out of control. We need to lock everything down. We need to shut everything down. So they not only make her stay in her room and stay away from her sister so that she doesn't hurt her sister, but they close the gates to the castle, that nobody in the village can even come into the castle or interact with them in any way. Now symbolically, this would be like what happens with us in our lives when something bad goes on, or we do the wrong thing, or say the wrong thing, or something doesn't play out right, or we hurt somebody that we love and care about. Our immediate tendency, many times, is to just shut down, right? To close the castle as the king and queen that you are of your own castle and village. We shut it down. Now, with that shutting down, there's a lyric in the song "Let It Go," where Elsa kind of explains what she learned from her parents. It's this: don't let them in, don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. And so what happens in the story is that instead of celebrating this power that she has, instead of teaching her how to channel this power in a beautiful way, she is taught that who and what she is wrong. She's taught that who and what she is hurts people. She's taught that who and what she is and what she does naturally is a problem and you need to be shut away. And I have a question for you. Have you ever been afraid of your own power?
Yes.
Because that's what this story is about. And what I want us to get to the place of understanding today is when you feel that fear, in whatever scenario it is, right? In this case, being afraid of your power. And well, let's talk about that for a second, because what does that look like, right? Many times it can look like you may have understood and learned what the power of your word is. You may have said something to somebody that just chopped them down to bits, because your words are powerful when they're added with emotion, right? And you recognize that, oh, I better not ever say anything again, right? So you shut away. Or maybe you were in a relationship, someone you love, you said something or did something that seems insurmountable, that was so hurtful and so bad that you decide that I can never be in a relationship again, or I can never open up in that way, or I can never be vulnerable in that way, because this power that I have is too much, right? And what I want us to get to the place of understanding is that although the tendency is to shut down, although the tendency is to shut away, as the king and queen did in this story, what I want us to get to the place is of appreciation. And when we feel the fear, we say, "Bless you, fear." Why? Because I recognize that fear is simply an emotion. And every emotion is here to tell us something and teach us something. Emotions inherently aren't good or bad. Yes, in the story, Elsa hurts her sister, right? She harms her sister. But then there was an opportunity to do something different. There was an opportunity to learn. However, in the story, they moved from the place of fear. But if we say, bless you, fear, what I love about that is that puts us back in the seat of power. That puts us back in the seat of control. Because we have an option here. We have an option to decide what we believe to be true. Do we believe that life is happening to us? Do we believe that life is happening for us? Or do we believe that life is happening through us? And there are three different ways of being and ways of looking at the world. Now, if you believe that life is happening to you, well, then you're operating in the story as we saw it. That, oh no, something happened to my sister and something happened to me and I'm cursed with this power. And so I'm a victim of life and so I got to shut away. That's I believe life is happening to me. Now what's interesting, and this is a more enlightened idea, if you believe that life is happening for you, it gives you a bit of power, right? Because then you can say, well, the universe is operating on my behalf, or God is operating on my behalf. But then that would also mean that at times the universe might not operate on your behalf and might not support you. So that idea for you is good as long as it's good. But if something happens that we would deem negative or something that we don't enjoy, then all of a sudden we're back to the to me, we become a victim of the story. But if life is happening through you, that means that you control the reins. That means that you drive the car. That means that you have the possibility and the power to change any circumstances or difficulty or challenge that is happening in your life. If you believe that life is happening through you, then you have power. And that's the only place where you can absolutely have power. But then it requires you to be in that place as a king and a queen, that you're not swayed by anything that happens, even when the negative thing happens, even when somebody's hurt, even when your power is misused in some way. You recognize that life is happening through me. And as surely as I have used my power in this moment, in the story, what happened again, that Elsa, she was overwhelmed in the moment. She said, wait, you're going too fast. She was cluttered. She was frustrated. And it was out of that moment that she hurt her sister. Not because her power was bad, but because she was in this mode, she was in this place of being overwhelmed, of feeling like she couldn't keep up. And so again, in this story, Elsa's emotions, whether it was fear, whether it was stress, whether it was worry, whether it was being overwhelmed, those were the things that fueled her power as we were first introduced to the story. But as we recognize at the end of the story, she learned that, oh, I can use the emotion, the power, the feeling of love and create equally from the same place. So let's talk about emotions, right? Because again, if you're feeling the emotion of fear, right? Because you are powerful and you will have experiences of your power every day. That's what we're doing. We're experiencing how powerful we are as creators, as choosers, as manifestors of the life that we live. But we must understand that there's nothing wrong with the feeling. The feeling is simply cluing us in. Emotions have a purpose. But we're not taught that, right? Generally speaking, men are taught to not show emotion. That emotion is bad, right? So don't show your emotions. Block it off. Don't cry. Don't feel anything, right? On the other side, women are told that you're too emotional. And so then what happens, many women say, oh, well, I don't want to be too emotional, so then you step into the masculine role of not being emotional. But if emotions have a purpose, that means that we're not tapping into something that is here for us. Something that is designed to help us win. Something that is designed to help us to sit in the seat of power in our lives. So what is that? Well, our emotions are our communication with our inner being, with Source, with God, with our soul, with the thing, the part of us that is more powerful than anything we see in this world. Who and what we are, that we experience ourselves here on the earth, we were talking about it in class the other day, that represents 5% of who and what we are. But there's 95% of you that is non-physical, that is spiritual, that knows all, sees all, and is connected to all, that is available to you and is speaking to us through our emotions. That's why our emotions have a purpose. Our emotions have a purpose. But again, they're neither good nor bad. They're simply indicators. They're simply indicators of where we are. When we feel what we would deem a negative emotion, in this case, stress, worry, doubt, being overwhelmed, being irritated, being frustrated, being angry, we just know that, okay, I'm not in alignment with who I really am. Because when I'm in alignment with who I really am, when I'm locked in, when I'm tapped in, I feel joy. I feel ease. I feel all is well. I know that life is working out for me. I feel in this state of power. And as we look in the story, what's interesting and what can be tricky with this power that we possess, see, when Elsa was in this place of needing to defend herself, when she was in this place of feeling like someone was trying to hurt me, right? She runs away and she builds this elaborate castle, right? Which was a beautiful castle, but it was created out of fear. And even in the moment when there's guards that come and try to attack her and try to kill her, again, as she's feeling fearful, she uses her power, but she uses it from this other energy, from this other place, which is not fully who and what she is. Why do we know that? Well, because she believed, and she says in the story that, oh, well, you know, this is the only way I can be free. And that's the heart of the song, Let It Go. I'm just going to be who I am, and this is how I'm going to be free, because they told me to conceal it, don't feel it, and now I'm just going to let it go. But she was by herself, way up in a mountain of ice. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like freedom to me. That doesn't sound like freedom. So, and again, this is the part that's interesting when we look at it, because it feels like power. It looks like power. Some would say that oh wow, she's amazing. She can create this amazing castle and she can do all of these things, but she's alone and by herself. That's not power, and it's not freedom. We can look at it in our own world, right? When we look at great superpowers, when we look at how there are different governments that want to move forward based on from a place of fear, right? Projecting their power out in the world. But if you're isolated and alone, and there's no sense of unity, there's no sense of community, I argue that that's not actually a powerful place. And so it takes me to an idea that I want to share today from a book called Power versus Force by David Hawkins. And what he's arguing in the book is that there's a powerful way to live and there's a forceful way to live. And force can be, you know, it can look like it's a good thing. In the case of the story, again, she was being forceful, but she wasn't necessarily being powerful. And when we look at that, we can understand and start to see where our emotions fall and how our emotions are cluing us into something. And so David Hawkins created what he calls this map of consciousness. And he takes us through this emotional scale that Abraham Hicks also talks about. Abraham Hicks talks about our emotional guidance system. That whatever emotion we're feeling can clue us into where we are, if we're in harmony with the truth of who and what we are, or if we're in disharmony with the truth of who and what we are. So I want to take us through this list. I want us to look at this, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. And I hope and I believe that it will illuminate some things. Because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when we come to understand our emotions, again, not fearing them, it's a power, right? Not fearing them, but understanding it and then using that as information. Just like when we look at a temperature gauge, and the temperature gauge says it's 80 degrees, we're like, oh, that's an indicator. And so I can choose to lower the temperature of the room by turning on the air conditioning, or I could choose to increase the temperature of the room by opening a window or letting more sunshine in. It's simply an indicator, right? And to that same point, the Kabbalion teaches us from the principle of polarity that we must understand, as I said, emotions are neither good or bad, in the same way that temperature is neither good nor bad, right? If it's winter outside and it's 70 degrees inside, 70 degrees feels good, right? But if it's 90 degrees, you know, if it's 90 degrees outside and then 70 degrees outside, comparatively, that's what determines what's good or what's bad. It's not that inherently the number 70 is a good number. It's because you don't always want the temperature to be 70. Or inherently you want the temperature to be 30. You don't always want that. And so that is what we're talking about. Emotions are the same way. The emotions are neither good nor bad. They're simply indicators. So let's go through this list. Cool. So we're going to start at the bottom of the list. The very bottom. Shame. Right? Now, what's interesting about shame, at the bottom of the list, we recognize that we have no access to power. We have no access to power when we're in the point of shame. We think that something has been, we've done something wrong. We believe that the world is against us. We believe that we're bad. This is that level as we talk about the sort of traditional understanding of the Adam and Eve story, that there's something wrong with us, and Adam and Eve sinned, and so that's why we're all bad. That level of shame is also can be associated with the level of depression and hopelessness. Guilt is just another step up, but what's interesting about guilt is a little better than shame. Interesting, right? I mean, shame is when, as in the story, she was completely locked away, that there was nothing you could do about it, that you just got to be, imprisoned, right? But guilt is a step above that. And so that can actually be helpful. And as we're thinking about shifting our emotions, if you're in the place of shame, you can't go from the place of shame to, oh, I'm all unconditional love and life is good and all is well. But you can move from shame to guilt. This is how we use our emotions. But then as we move from guilt, we go to this place of apathy. Apathy is interesting because we can think about and look at many people's across history that were in that place of being apathetic, that, there's just nothing I can do, I don't have any power, I'm not ashamed, I'm not guilty anymore, but I just don't have power. And there are other people that are stronger than me, there are other people that are better than me, and there's just nothing I can do. So then you're standing still, right? There's nothing happening. But again, this place is a little better than shame and guilt. And you use this to move up. If you're in this guilty place, you got to move up. You move up to apathy. You're actually moving up closer to harmony. And then we move to the place of grief, which is interesting because I don't know about you, but there's a moment in time where after you come out of that shame for myself, and I've come out of that guilty place, as I've come out of that apathetic place, I might boo-hoo and cry for a while because I start to realize maybe that all of the things that I could have done, all of the time that I might have wasted, so I'm starting to realize that there's something, stronger within me. There's something better about how I can live my life. And at that moment of grief, I might feel like I wasted time. But that feeling of grief in that moment is a place of release. Because you're now releasing all of this that is underneath it. And then we move up to the place of fear, which is a much more powerful emotion than shame, guilt, apathy, and grief, and is moving us closer to where we want to be, at the level of love, at the level of courage, at the level of enlightenment. Now, what I find interesting, David Hawkins actually puts desire here as what he would consider a lower emotion. And I thought that was interesting because I don't personally believe that there's anything wrong with desire. Everything is birthed out of desire. We must desire something in order for it to come into being. But the way David Hawkins is teaching it here, I think it's powerful. Because what he's recognizing and understanding, and I think we can see this when we look at political movements, you have to first desire something in order for it to come into being. And that's why desire leads to anger. And I use political movements as a way to think about this. That eventually you start to realize that there was something that may have happened. There's a way of living in this world, a way of living in this life that you don't appreciate anymore, and you want change. And you moved out of fear. I think about even the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. It was required to move out of the level of fear, to no longer be fearful of the government, to no longer be fearful of the structure, to no longer be fearful of Jim Crow, and then have a desire for something else. But what I noticed that happened in that particular movement, as we look at the Black Power movement, the outgrowth of the civil rights movement, it moved to anger, which can be helpful, right? You have to get to that angry place. And it's kind of similar as I talked about the grief place of being sad and the grief place of releasing. But then you might get mad at yourself and everybody else in the situation, in the story. But as you move to that place, this is energy, right? This is an emotional energy. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or wrong, right? It's an emotional energy. And then we move to the place of pride, which again is interesting when we think about political movements. Pride is helpful. Because you're no longer ashamed of who and what you are. You're no longer guilty of who and what you are. Which is why I love, if we look at the LGBT movement, again, if we look at the Black Power movement, pride had to show up. This is why the song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, showed up. It moved away from the shame and guilt. Think about in this context, in this world, in this country, when we think about slavery, when we think about how our African ancestors were told that there was something wrong with them, that you should be ashamed of who you are, that scientifically there's something wrong with you. They had to overcome all of that, the apathetic place. There were many people who were enslaved and like, well, this is all we can do, you know? And they might have believed in heaven and we'll go to the sweet by and by and then it'll be okay. And then there were many that were in the grief place. There were many that moved to the fear place, but then the desire started to show up. And again, what I've come to understand is that initially that desire can make you angry, because you have a desire to be free, and now you're mad because the world around you isn't free. Now you're mad because you don't know how you're going to get there. But then you have to develop this place of pride. This is where you start to understand that you matter. This is where we start to understand and can step into that place that there is something good about us. But again, we can't stay just at the level of pride, which is interesting. But it's a powerful emotion. And so then we start to move to the top of the scale. We come out of pride and we move first to the place of courage. This is where we finally are in this place of harmony. And what I find interesting about the fact that David Hawkins puts fear on one side and courage on the other. And this is something that I haven't heard anyone else talk about, but I think is powerful, because have you ever heard the idea of, feel the fear and do it anyway? Have you ever heard the idea that courage isn't the absence of fear, but it's just moving forward even though the fear is present? I say that's not true. You cannot be courageous and fearful at the same time. And so what I would argue, in the same way that we saw Elsa, we could say that she was courageous because she defended herself from the people that were trying to attack her. She was fearful and she defended herself. And what A Course in Miracles teaches us is that in my defenselessness, my safety lies. A Course in Miracles teaches us that I am not a body, I'm free. When you understand that, you don't have to defend anything. When you understand that, you are not in a fearful place. When you understand that and say that in my defenselessness, my safety lies, then you can be encouraged. Which is a completely different idea, and I don't think that we're really taught what courage really means. We celebrate our soldiers and we love our soldiers, but if we understand why, generally speaking, we go to war, it's based on fear. And so then we're celebrating courageous acts that only came about because of some fearful ideas or thoughts about some other, or what somebody's going to do, or this dictator or that this dictator, and we have to protect our shores and somebody can hurt or harm us. What we know to be true as spiritual people is that there is no thing that can hurt or harm us. And so that is why A Course in Miracles affirms, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And then we move to this place of neutrality. We've all been in this place where you can live and let live. That you're no longer swayed or bothered by what somebody else is doing or believes or how they're choosing to live their life. You're in this neutral place where it's all good because you want that same thing for yourself. You want to be able to live in freedom and peace as you choose to live, just as you want everyone else. And what I also love, David Hawkins talks about, once we get to this place, this is also where everyone else starts to get included. When we're in this other place, it's really about yourself, right? When we're in that shameful place, that guilty place, that fearful place, that angry place, it doesn't include any room for anybody else to prosper. But when we're in this place, the courageous place, the neutral place, and then we move to willingness, it's a place that includes everyone else. When we move to acceptance, it's a place that starts to include everyone else. And then we move up to reason, which I love, because we talk a lot about the left brain and right brain and the spiritual idea of feeling and recognizing that our analytical mind can get us in trouble. But our analytical mind, our reasoning mind can also help us. Because certain things just start to make sense when you look at it. It's like, why am I imprisoning this person based on a certain belief? Right? It starts to make sense. You start to bring reason. And again, as I'm thinking politically today, many times it just makes perfect sense when you look at, well, why would we go and bomb another country? Why would we do that? My reasoning mind shows up and says that this just shouldn't be, right? Because I've already moved to this place of willingness and acceptance, and I know that all is well and we're one, and I know that there's unity amongst us all. And then we're at the level of love. Now again, the other thing that's interesting in terms of shifting our lives, all you have to do is get to this place. Get this place of courage, right? You've shifted. Your emotion has shifted when you're at that place. But you can continue to move up to the place of love, and then joy, or bliss, peace, and then ultimately what he calls enlightenment. What David Hawkins argues is that, this is the place of the gurus. This is the place that Gandhi was, Buddha, that Jesus was, that at the height of his ministry, right? This place where, you're so confident and so sure about what is true that you know nothing can hurt or harm you, that you can walk in any situation, circumstance, or difficulty. Someone's like, oh, we don't have enough food. Okay, here. Boom, everybody eats. Right? That's that place, because you just understand that everything works together. You understand that abundance is just the truth of life. You understand that more than enough is just the truth of life. You understand that life really is good and all good, and it doesn't have anything to do with what you see, but what you know and believe to be true. And so this is, again, I just thought it was helpful to actually see the words, to see how we're moving up the scale. Because this is where our emotions are helpful to us. Again, not that it's wrong. I put it in red just because red equals stop. Because when we're in that place, we got to stop. It never feels good, right? While anger can be powerful, and again, we can use our anger to chop people down and cut people down, but it doesn't feel good for you in the moment or in the aftermath. Good. So that's why we can say, bless you, anger. Or when you're in that fearful place, yes, it may have its place or purpose, or it may feel justified in the moment, but it actually doesn't feel good to your inner being. So you can say, bless you, fear. It doesn't feel good, and so now I know how I got to make a shift, and I know that, okay, if I'm in the fearful place, then I can move to the place of desire. Right? And then from desire, I can move to anger. From anger, I can move to pride. From pride, I can get to this level of courage. The absence of fear. And then I can move on up a little higher. See, this is why the songs are powerful. Henry Jackson. Move on up a little higher. This is what it was about. And so this is why we have the example in the movie Frozen, where Anna is going up the mountain, moving on up a little higher to understand a deeper truth. And so what's beautiful in the movie and in the story, eventually, Elsa recognizes and learns that it's through the power of love that she can also create. Because all she had learned up to that point was, this thing happens when I get scared and when I get nervous, and everybody told me I gotta wear these gloves, and I can't show it, I gotta conceal it, don't feel it, right? And so then we suppressed it. What I've come to understand in our own lives, anything that we suppress is never actually suppressed. It just shows up in a distorted way, right? And that's why if you look at the visuals in the movie, when she was creating from that place of fear, she was creating these sharp, jagged pieces of ice. But once she started creating from the place of love, she created this beauty. It was a free-flowing, visually, the animators and the writers of the story were showing us that there's a difference. It's all power. The power is neutral. But when you're creating from the place of stress, doubt, worry, and fear, then you have these jagged pieces. And so I want to leave us with one last thought. And it's from Abraham Hicks. To give us a sense of what being in this place looks like. Courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, enlightenment. And how we can know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, where we are. Not to shame ourselves, not to blame ourselves, not to mean that we're wrong, but actually knowing that, oh, the indicators that I have within myself work. This is why we say, bless you, fear. In the same way, we don't yell at the thermometer for stating that the temperature is 70 degrees, right? We're like, thank you, I'm glad that the thermometer works so that I can make a change if I decide to make a change. That's what your emotions are. Indicators, a thermometer. And be glad that they work, right? So this is why it's a false idea and premise to tell men not to be emotional. No, don't act on your emotions, right? Anger can be destructive if acted on, but recognize that if you feel it, then you have an indicator to help you how to shift somewhere. We don't have to tell women, don't be over emotional. Recognize that you have emotions. Recognize that it's a gift. Recognize that it's beautiful, but use it to create in love and from love. And so Abraham Hicks says this: absolute alignment with your own source energy means that you know the following. You are free. You are powerful. You are good. You are love. You have value. You have purpose. And all is well. And so that's the place that our emotions are always trying to take us to. When we feel bad, our emotions are simply telling us, you forgot that you have value. Come back to the place of you have value. When we don't feel good and our emotions are moving, they're saying, hey, Greg, you forgot that you're free. Hey, dude, you're free. Come back to this place of freedom. So when our emotions feel erratic and it gets crazy, our emotions are just telling us, hey, you forgot that you're loved. You forgot that all is well. Come back to all is well. Come back to the land of all is well. That's your home. That's all that's happening. Another idea, another way to think about this, which is equally powerful, is that many times when we're feeling what we would call negative emotions, it's because our inner being, our soul, has made a choice and already gone somewhere, gone to where we desire. Like there could be something, if you desire a certain type of relationship, if you desire a certain type of career, right, and you're serious about that, at the point that you start to feel negative emotion, it's because you're keeping yourself away from that thing that you desire. And your inner being, the truth of you, is saying, hey, you want to go over here, but you're still in this other land of anger. You're in this other land of blame. You're in this other land of guilt. You're in this other land of apathy. That's not where you said you wanted to go, right? If you want to go, if you want to stay there, cool, but you said you want to go somewhere else. You said you want to go to this place of living your desires. You said you want to go to this place of your ultimate love. You said you want to go to this place of an amazing career. You said you want to go to this place of being wealthy. If that is true, you got to go to where it is. And I'm using this indicator, this communicator within you, your emotions, to show you how close or how far off you are. And it's just as easy. It's so easy to move up the scale without shame, without blame. Because again, when you're in that lower place of shame and blame, you got to move up. And in that place, and in that moment, pride and anger are helpful. They're so helpful because they get you out of the ditch. And then once you're out of the ditch, then you can move on up a little higher to the level of courage, to the level of love, to the level of joy. So in this moment, I ask everyone to stand. Do a prayer. And in this moment, can we just say, bless you, fear.
Bless you, fear.
Bless you, anger.
Bless you, anger.
Bless you, pride.
Bless you, pride.
Because we recognize and we can bless these things and love on these things because we recognize that it's an indicator of a communication that we have with the all that is. That the truth of our being, our successful selves, our courageous selves, our loving selves are always seeking to bring us back into alignment with that truth. And so we bless our emotions. No longer will we hide away like Elsa did in the story, building a castle of ice, building monsters to keep people away. There's no reason to do that because we know that this is an indicator. We know that this is something that is working correctly and for us. And so as we know that, we bless our emotions and we use them to move us up. Move us up to the level of courage, of willingness, of love, of neutrality, of joy, of bliss. Because that is where we desire to live. Oh my God, I am so grateful and thankful to know that we really don't need anything else. That as the song already said, the only thing that we need more of is you. It's in us already. What we need, the communication is already here. Our inner being is always talking to us. And yes, while we may have learned and many people or society may have taught us that our emotions are bad, that have taught us that anger is bad or unnecessary, we now see what its purpose is, and so we call it good. We see what its purpose is, and so we bless it. We see what its purpose is, and so we use it, because we recognize as the powerful beings of our life, as the king and queen of our life, we will not shut the gate. We will not shut the door. We will not let the people out, but we will keep the gate open and learn how to operate and use this power from love, in love. And it is from that place that we will create beauty, just as Elsa recognized and learned that and began to create beautiful things. It is from that place that we will create from a place that supports and celebrates all, just as Elsa got to the place of learning how to provide winter for all in a way that was affirming, in a way that was enjoyable for all, in a way that was no longer harmful, but in a way that brought joy, in a way that brought excitement, in a way that brought laughter. Because that is what we are here to do. As we are the light of the world, we recognize that we are here to illuminate and light all illuminates, light heals. Light is a thing that brings clarity to life. And as we celebrate these properties of life, we're celebrating the properties of who and what we are. We are the light of the world. And we will use that beautiful, brilliant power to enhance the experience of the entire world. And so I am grateful for these creators, these choosers that are here, making the choice to listen to their emotions, making the choice to use their emotions as a powerful indicator of what's going on, to be able to shift and change any experience, any circumstance, any challenge, or any difficulty. And so we are choosing to walk through our life differently this week and from this moment forward. For this, we are so grateful. We lift up our voices and we say, Amen,
Amen.
Ashe,
Ashe.
and so it is.
And so it is.